get what we want. Hey! It's about that time!
We know what we want to do. It's another opportunity for us to get better.
Alabama has won the match.
How you compete. That means how hard you play, how tough you play, how you can sustain in tough circumstances.
Welcome to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Renaissance Bank. I'm Christopher England alongside Maggie Hetzel.
We unfortunately don't have any football highlights for you guys or a game from this past weekend to talk about.
We don't, but the #1 ranked Crimson Tide, they were off this past weekend, but that doesn't mean they just took the week off, Maggie.
No, they practiced Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday of last week. While they didn't have a game to prepare for on Saturday, it was a chance for them to improve and get better, which is all Coach Saban said.
But did everyone take advantage of that opportunity? Let's hear what Coach Saban had to say about the Crimson Tide's bye week.
Well, I don't think you can put everybody in a category. I think, some guys made improvement who had the right mindset during the bye week. Other guys, we tried to push to, get them to stay focused like they needed to. So in some cases we got some improvement. In some cases maybe, I think there's three things that happen in a bye week. You either make improvement because you have the right mindset, you're stagnant, you kind of stay the same, or you backslide. I mean, it's one of those three things, and I don't think you can categorize everybody and put them in the same category that everybody improved. I think some guys that had the right mindset improved, and some guys probably didn't get out of it what they could have.
Even though Alabama was idle this past week, the Tide received a few more first-place votes this week as the Crimson Tide are still #1 in the Associated Press poll. Alabama picked up 3 more first-place votes for a total of 32 this week. Clemson is second, with Ohio State and Georgia tied for third, and LSU rounds out the top 5. That gives the SEC 3 of the top 5 teams in the country. Florida is 7th, but after that loss to the Gators, Auburn falls 5 spots to number 12. The Tide's opponent this week, Texas A&M, moved up a spot to number 24.
And over in the coaches' poll, the Crimson Tide received a big boost in the number of first-place votes. Alabama received 13 more this week to bump their total to 42 of the possible 65 first-place votes. Coaches have Clemson behind the Tide at number 2, with Georgia and Ohio State and Oklahoma rounding out their top 5. LSU is 6th, Florida at 7, Auburn, they drop 5 spots in the rankings to number 12. Texas A&M, they come in at 21.
And Alabama returns to action this week as the Crimson Tide travels to College Station to take on Texas A&M.
And after that, the #1 ranked Tide will return home to take on Tennessee the following week. And guess what? We finally have a night game in Bryant-Denny.
That means we'll finally get to see the new LED lighting system in action for a game inside Bryant-Denny Stadium.
You just saw what the new LED lighting system is capable of. I can't wait to see it in action next Saturday against as the Tide takes on Tennessee Volunteers for a night game in Bryant-Denny Stadium, and hopefully under 90 degrees.
Yes, hopefully so. It's going to be a late one for that third Saturday in October matchup. Alabama and Tennessee will kick off at 8 p.m. Central. The game will be televised on ESPN.
But before that matchup against the Vols next week, and the Tide, they will take on Texas A&M this weekend.
Coming up next, we'll preview that top 25 matchup between Alabama and Texas A&M.
Tide TV This Week is brought to you by ATI. Built by Bama. Rebuilt by ATI Physical Therapy. Ford and the F-150. Tough runs in our family. See your local Ford dealer today. AFS, a Bayless company. your foundation and waterproofing specialists, serving you since 2000.
It does not worry itself with what stands in its path. It is not complacent during its high times, and it does not dwell on its low times.
Now you owe it to yourself and your teammates.
The Tide cares only for its own persistence, for its resiliency to roll again and again, faster and stronger than the time before. The Tide always returns.
This weekend, the Tide won't be at home as they hit the road for the first time in almost a month. Alabama travels to College Station to take on number 21 Texas A&M. While there's a lot of history between the two schools, they've met only 11 times on the field, with the Crimson Tide holding a 9-2 all-time advantage. Before winning 6 national championships in his 25 years as head coach of the Crimson Tide, Coach Paul Bear Bryant was head coach of the Texas A&M Aggies. Coach Bryant spent 4 seasons as the Aggies head coach before Mama called and he returned home to Tuscaloosa. 2 of Coach Bryant's players eventually became head coach of the Texas A&M program as well. Gene Stallings played for Coach Bryant at Texas A&M and later became an assistant coach for Coach Bryant at Alabama before taking over as the Aggies head coach from 1965 to 1971. Stallings returned home to Tuscaloosa and won a national championship with the Crimson Tide in 1992. Jackie Sherrill played for Coach Bryant at Alabama from 1963 through 1965 and later became head coach of the Aggies for 7 seasons from 1982 through 1988. Then there's Dennis Franchione. He coached Alabama for just 2 seasons in 2001 and 2002 and then left to become head coach at Texas A&M. Franchione spent 5 seasons as head coach at A&M. That is part of the history of the 2 programs, but there's also some connections on the current coaching staffs. The head coach of the Aggies, Jimbo Fisher, was the offensive coordinator under Coach Saban at LSU from 2000 until 2004. And there's a former Aggie on the Crimson Tide's coaching staff. Special teams and tight ends coach Jeff Banks spent 5 years at Texas A&M before joining Coach Saban's staff in 2018. Texas A&M enters this season's matchup 3-2. The Aggies dominated Texas State 41-7 and did the same against Lamar 62-3. The Aggies squeaked by Arkansas in their last matchup 31-27. The 2 losses have come against top 10 opponents. Texas A&M lost to then number 1 Clemson on the road 24-10 in week 2. Texas A&M's other loss came at home against then number 8 Auburn. Despite trailing 21-3, Texas A&M battled back, scoring 17 fourth-quarter points, but fell short 28-20. The Texas A&M offense leads the SEC in time of possession, averaging over 33 minutes per game, and is outpacing opponents by over 125 yards per contest. The Aggies averaged 426 yards of offense per game, while holding opponents to just 299. Through the air, the Aggies have thrown for over 500 yards more than their opponents, averaging 292 yards per game, while allowing just 191 yards passing. Junior Kellen Mond returns at quarterback for Texas A&M. The Aggies QB ranks 3rd in the SEC in total offense, averaging 288.6 yards per game, and is 3rd in passing yards per game with 266.6. In 5 games this season, Mond has thrown 10 touchdown passes with 4 interceptions. Junior wideout Jamon Osborne has a strong connection with Mond. The 2 attended IMG Academy in Florida together. That may be part of the reason Osborne leads the Aggies in receptions and receiving yards. Osborne ranks 3rd in the SEC with 32 receptions for 446 yards, while junior Courtney Davis leads the team and is tied for 9th in the SEC with 4 touchdown receptions. Defensively, Texas A&M has been stingy on the ground, allowing just 108 yards per game and just 3 rushes over 20 yards on the season. However, the Aggies haven't been able to get much of a pass rush as they rank last in the SEC with just 8 sacks on the season. Another area the Aggies have struggled is turnover margin. Alabama leads the SEC and is 3rd in the nation in turnover margin at +8, while Texas A&M is last in the SEC at -2. The last time Texas A&M defeated Alabama, it took a Heisman-worthy performance. Johnny Manziel led the 15th-ranked Aggies to a 29-24 upset over the number 1 ranked Crimson Tide. That performance catapulted Manziel to win the Heisman Trophy. Since that game, Alabama has won 6 straight over Texas A&M by an average score of 40-20. And Coach Saban is still undefeated against his former assistants. That streak currently stands at 17. Kickoff is scheduled for 2:30 p.m. in College Station. The game will be broadcast on CBS. Stay with us. We'll have more Tide TV This Week coming up next.
Tide TV This Week is brought to you by ATI, built by Bama, rebuilt by ATI Physical Therapy, the University of Alabama, where legends are made.
We're going to work our tails off every day. We're going to get this thing rolling in the right direction.
Oh, baby, what a jumper!
But we're going to get better, so we're going to give max effort, continuous growth, and then we talk about selfless love.
A huge three. Oh my goodness, what a play. Oh, mercy. Unbelievable. Holy smokes. Showtime.
Bama fans here at Coleman are on their feet.
Welcome back. The Alabama baseball team is currently in week 3 of fall camp. The team has been practicing and scrimmaging against one another for the past couple of weeks.
And we had all access to the Tide's practices and even mic'd up one of the Tide's star players. Let's go all access at practice with the Tide's starting catcher, Sam Prater. It's brought to you by ATI.
Goodness gracious, dude. You've been swimming in the lake?
Dude, let's get this picture.
Good Lord.
Sweat boys.
The sweat boys?
That is everyday thing. Look at that.
Oh my God.
No, brother.
Stop. That's disgusting. Oh my God, dude. That's gross. Looks like me running to the lunch line.
Oh, God.
Ross?
What's up, babe?
What are you doing with a fielder's glove?
You know, I'm gonna go hydrate. I don't know, man. Just kind of found it. It made its way to my hand. Don't run into a wall like Johnny.
Nah, I wouldn't do that.
Remember that?
I'm an athlete.
Johnny? With what?
Yeah, he ran slap into the brick wall.
Right into the brick wall.
Slap into the brick wall. Oh, there he is. Stir, baby.
Yeah, I know. I gotta watch out for that wall. Seems like it's before.
I'm low-key nervous. I'm awful at popularized.
Where do you need a shot?
Awful. No.
We need one for the
All right,
Oh,
all right.
yeah, one for the camera.
Take it easy on me.
Give it to him. You gotta give him
All right, you ready? Yeah. You awake? You wake up, dude. Look like you're about to pass out. Look like you're about to die. All right, here. Your turn.
No.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
You got chest protection on.
You can catch the Alabama baseball team in action this fall in a couple of exhibition matchups as they prepare for the upcoming season. The Tide will take on Clemson in South Carolina on October 19th and against Southern Miss here in Tuscaloosa on Sunday, October 27th.
You can also come and watch the team practice at Sewell Thomas Stadium. Coach Bohannon and the Tide will practice a couple of more weeks before the end of fall practice with the annual Fall World Series. Admission is free to come watch the Tide practice. You can go to rolltide.com for the latest on practice dates and times.
Stay with us. We'll have more Tide TV This Week coming up next. Welcome back to Tide TV This Week, brought to you by Renaissance Bank. The Alabama soccer team picked up a big win in overtime on the road last Sunday against Tennessee in Knoxville. The Tide looked to follow that up with another big win at home this past Friday night against Mississippi State. Alabama got on the board early in the 7th minute with a goal by freshman Reyna Reyes. With the help of Abby Bivens, the Crimson Tide increased their lead in the 18th minute with a Bryn Martin scoring her 3rd goal of the season, with assists from Casey Wirtz and Serena Pham. However, the Bulldogs responded with just seconds remaining in the first half with a goal by Miranda Carrasco, bringing the Bulldogs to within 1 at 2-1. With an Alabama own goal in the 73rd minute, Mississippi State tied the game at 2-2, but just like last week, the Crimson Tide pulled out the win in overtime. Gabby Duca secured the win for the Crimson Tide in the 95th minute with the assist from Casey Wirtz. Duca launched a shot from inside the box that found the back of the net for the game winner. A hard-fought victory for the Tide as Alabama defeated Mississippi State 3-2 in overtime.
That was probably the best feeling I've had since being at the University of Alabama. I haven't scored many goals being here, so to finally get like a goal that like is a game winner in overtime, it was just probably the best feeling I've had so far.
That win improves the Tide's record to 7-4-1 and evens their SEC record at 2-2. Now, the Alabama swimming and diving team participated in a couple of meets away from Tuscaloosa this past week. Alabama faced off against Georgia at the Birmingham Crossplex this past Friday. Despite winning 8 individual events and the final relay, the Alabama women lost 163.5 to 136.5, while the men won both relays and earned 6 individual wins, but lost the overall meet 157 to 143. Let's take a look back at some of the highlights from the Tide's SEC opener against Georgia. Who are we? Bama! Who are we? Bama!
The women bounced back the next day against the Commodores in Nashville in their second meet in 2 days. The Alabama women's swimming and diving team swept the individual races and both relays against Vanderbilt, defeating the Commodores 146 to 105.
The swimming and diving team returns to action on November 22nd through the 24th against Georgia Tech in Atlanta.
Now back in Tuscaloosa, the Alabama volleyball team returned home on Wednesday night to take on Mississippi State Bulldogs in a nationally televised matchup on ESPNU. The Crimson Tide led the entire first set, winning 25-18. The second set extended well past the 25-point mark with the 14 set points before the Bulldogs eventually won that one 39-37. The 76 combined points in the second set is the highest point total for the Crimson Tide since a 42-40 set loss to Ole Miss in 2007. With that match, the tied at one set each. Alabama rebounded with a decisive 25-17 win in the third frame before closing out the match with a 25-19 win in the fourth. The win improves Alabama's record to 11-5 and 3-2 in the SEC play.
Now, the Alabama men's golf team was in action this week as the Tide hosted the Jerry Pate National Intercollegiate on Monday and Tuesday at the Old Overton Club in Vestavia Hills. Wilson Furr led the Crimson Tide with a 22nd place individual finish after he carded a final round of 1 under par 69 during Tuesday's final round of play. As a team, the Tide finished in 9th place, 27 over par for an 867 total. BYU and Colorado State finished as co-champions at 17 under par. The men returned to action on October 28th and 29th at the Cypress Point Classic in Pebble Beach, California.
Stay with us. We'll have more Tide TV this week coming up next.
Serena Pham through traffic, it's headed away, and the follow-up through traffic and deflection scores. Nobody on the receiving end, and a follow-up score. Works. The setup, the goal! And what a setup, Bama wins in overtime.
Those were our BBVA top plays of the week. Now let's take a look at our players of the week, brought to you by Payless Drugs. Cross country's Vincent Kiprop took home the Joe Piane Notre Dame individual crown, finishing first overall with a time of 23 minutes and 9.88 seconds in the men's blue division 5 mile. After missing the entire 2018 cross country season due to injury, Kiprop returned to action Friday with a new school best and meet record. It was also a personal best in the 5 mile by 15 seconds. He was named the SEC Men's Runner of the Week as well as the United States Track and Field and Cross Country Association National Athlete of the Week as well.
And next we go with soccer's Gabby Duca. The redshirt sophomore from Lewisville, Texas, kicked the game winner in overtime against Mississippi State to give the Tide a 3-2 win, and it was Duca's first career game-winning goal for the Crimson Tide uniform.
Now let's take a look at next week's schedule for the Crimson Tide. What's next is brought to you by Renaissance Bank.
The Alabama men's tennis team will take part in the ITA Regional Championships in Auburn beginning on next Thursday, while the women will compete in the ITA Southern Regional Championships in Baton Rouge.
Soccer travels to Mississippi to take on Ole Miss in Oxford on Thursday on the SEC Network, and volleyball will be in Baton Rouge to take on LSU on Friday night.
Baseball will take part in their first exhibition game of the fall against Clemson on the road on Saturday. Also on Saturday, the cross-country women's team will compete at the Pre-National Invitational in Indiana, while the cross-country men's team will take part in the Princeton Invitational in Princeton, New Jersey.
Football will have their first night game of the season as the Tide hosts the Tennessee Volunteers at 8 p.m. inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, and on Sunday, volleyball takes on Kentucky at 2 here in Foster Auditorium. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Tide TV This Week.
Have a great week, everybody. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
This has been a presentation of Learfield IMG College.